Hey everyone, welcome to Primo NUTMEG. This is your host Steve. On today's show, I have Ajamu Baraka, the 2016 Vice Presidential nominee for the Green Party. We are going to discuss the 2016 presidential race as well as the recent recount initiative. And we're also going to talk about the Dakota Access Pipeline protests, Black Lives Matter, the influence of George Soros on American politics, and Barack Obama's legacy. If these are subjects that you do find interesting, please do subscribe to Primo NUTMEG on YouTube, SoundCloud, and iTunes. And also check out previous episodes where we interview Noam Chomsky, Jill Stein, John McAfee, Cindy Sheehan, Medea Benjamin, Phil Zuckerman, and others. Hope you enjoyed today's show. Well, sir, I guess the first question that I really did want to ask you about is what's happening at Standing Rock. And this seems to be one of the biggest activist events in modern history, at least since Occupy Wall Street. So, just as an experienced activist, as somebody who was running for Vice President of the United States, what do you have to say about the protests that are happening at Standing Rock and also other places against the Dakota Access Pipeline?
Well, I think, as you said, this is a very important struggle to take place, not only because you have the indigenous people who have come together to protect their water source and the water source of something like 7 million people or 17 million people downstream, but we have a situation where we have this ongoing attempt on the part of indigenous people to assert their peoplehood, if you will, to assert their right to protect their sacred lands, to assert their right to continue to resist the efforts of what they see as a colonial state. So this is a very important struggle. What is instructive about this, though, has been to see the reaction from the corporation that is spearheading this effort. First, bringing in private security personnel and the kind of aggressive tactics that they use with using dogs and all of that, to the response from the state itself, using rubber bullets and other kinds of quote-unquote non-lethal means. And the other thing that's been instructive is to see the kind of solidarity that we have seen emerge from across the country. Here we had a struggle that was ignored for months by the corporate media, but after the images from the struggle that was first really circulated by Amy Goodman, and I think that a lot of press that resulted when myself and Jill Stein, when arrest warrants were issued for us, I think that helped to elevate the awareness on the part of the people in the U.S. on what was in fact unfolding in Standing Rock. So it's unfortunate that now we're at a stage where the state has threatened to evict the camps, using the bogus concern that they have about people's health over the winter, but it's also a very, I think, positive a reaction from people who have said that they are committed to standing in solidarity with the camps and are willing to resist, including, my understanding, a contingent of veterans who are on the way out there or who just got out there in the last couple of days. So this is a very important struggle that I think will help to set the tone for struggles that will be unfolding over the next 4 years.
How do you see this playing out? What do you see the end result being?
Well, I'm not sure how the end result might be, but I think in the interim, I think that the authorities are going to have to stand down at some point. They can't just eliminate this resistance through repression. I think that's becoming more and more clear. People have to be reminded that the reason why we have this fight is that the original route of this pipeline was supposed to go through northern Bismarck, but because the white residents of that area objected, they decided to reroute it through a route that they thought would not result in any kind of real resistance, and that's the route that we see now that moves very close to the Sioux reservation area and across lands that they consider to be sacred, with the result that we have seen over the last months. So if they wanted to address this situation in a fair way, then either they would stop the project or return the pipeline to its original path. But I don't think they are prepared to do either one of those. So how this is going to unfold remains to be seen, but it's clear that the resistance is going to continue.
So I did just want to ask you a little bit as well about the election that we just had. Mm-hmm. You were the vice presidential nominee for the Green Party. And, you know, this probably was the strangest election that has happened in the United States in quite some time. It was very unorthodox and bizarre. So I'm just wondering if, generally speaking, you have any thoughts that you would like to share for what it was like running for Vice President of the United States in the year 2016.
Well, it was a very educational experience, a very humbling experience. I had a chance to move across this country and see people who were involved in some very innovative resistance work. I was impressed by how well equipped people were to debate the issues. This notion that the American people are just politically illiterate is something that has to be kind of pushed back on, because while there is a lot of that out there, there are a lot of people who engage in serious reflection and who ground themselves in the issues and are looking for real answers before they decide how they're going to cast their votes. So it was a real education experience and on that for me on that level. It also was an educational experience in the sense that I saw that people are really hungry for an alternative. Even though many people were effectively fear-mongered into supporting the Democrats because they were legitimately concerned about the Donald Trump challenge, there still were many people who recognized that this duopoly is not something that has any kind of relationship to democracy. It does not provide any real choice for the people of this country, and they are looking for a difference. And I think that we saw that possibility or that potential for a new kind of politics reflected in the growing popularity around the Sanders campaign. And now it's interesting because the Sanders campaign they were articulating positions that have been Green Party positions for quite some time, and of course were positions that we had in the Baraka campaign, with the addition of us also having a very progressive foreign policy component. So we knew that the potential for popular support for our program and our campaign was out there. We just had to get access to the American people. But what we saw was that access is very difficult to achieve when you have collusion between the corporate media and the major parties, in particular, as revealed in the WikiLeaks, collusion and cooperation between the Democrats and most of the major media outlets. So there's a lot of lessons. There were a lot of things that were reaffirmed for me in terms of how this electoral process operates and the really fundamental anti-democratic character of it. So, these are some of the issues and some of the lessons that I'm going to carry with me and will help to inform my activism going forward.
On the topic of the media, something that I was very surprised by was the fact that CNN had a town hall with both you and Jill Stein, in prime time, able to speak to the American public. what was that experience like, and also what was the experience like dealing with the mainstream American media over the course of the election?
Well, that experience was good. I think that they felt compelled to offer a slot to me and Jill because they really wanted to prop up the libertarians, and so that would have seemed to be really unfair. That experience was a good experience. I wish we had more time, but it was an opportunity for us to begin to share with the American people some of our ideals. But you know, we haven't had too many other opportunities to really penetrate the mainstream press from there. I mean, Jill has been on a few on Fox for a few times. We've had some other interviews with a few news outlets, but for the most part, most of our exposure in the mainstream press, in particular the print press, has been in the form of attacks. They attacked Jill and mischaracterized her positions on various issues. And when I was brought onto the ticket, I came under withering attack for almost a month, where they delved into all of my writings and created a caricature that, of course, had nothing to do with who I really was. But and these were, you know, New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, you know, The Guardian. I mean, you name it. And so that was the role that they played to discredit this third party challenge. And you might recall that just before the end of the campaign, the Clinton folks retargeted the Green Party. It was a front page news item where they said basically that they're going to have to convince their supporters not to support a third party challenge. And right after that came out, we saw ourselves under withering attack once again. So, you know, you know, as long as the mainstream press is able to determine what kinds of information, what kinds of issues are presented to the people of this country, it's going to be very difficult to create and sustain a real progressive / radical opposition in the U.S.
Just in terms of the mischaracterizations, is there anything that you would like to officially clear up for the record? Anything that maybe kind of outraged you about how your positions were misinterpreted and mischaracterized?
Well, I mean, you know, I wasn't really outraged. I wasn't even surprised. It was just very interesting to me. I mean, they tried to characterize me as a black supremacist at one point. You know, they you know, wanted to focus in on my comments about the Barack Obama. They you know, characterized my ideas as being, you know, radical and way out beyond the pale. So there's nothing I really need to specifically deal with in terms of some of those attacks. It's the nasty character of U.S. politics. I mean, you know, we saw what was happening between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. We saw what happened in terms of what was directed at Bernie Sanders during the Democratic Party nomination process. We know the kind of dirty tricks that everybody plays. I mean, you know, everybody knows about the fact that the DNC was hacked, but very few people know that we were hacked also in the Green Party. My team was hacked.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, someone stole 12,000 emails from my account. And so we had the same kind of cybersecurity issues. And we definitely wasn't, I don't think the Russians were interested in us. So that hack had to come from other sources. So this is the nature of this thing they call a democracy here in the U.S. It's nasty. It really is. And that was something that it wasn't a lesson, but that was something that was really reaffirmed for me, the nastiness of U.S. politics.
And something that's unfortunate, I think, for the Green Party in particular, because you are to the left of the Democrats, it seems like whenever the Green Party gets any kind of traction, you're going to get demonized by the mainstream media. I think a good example of that was Ralph Nader. I mean, Ralph Nader used to be loved by the mainstream media prior to the 2000 election. He had hosted Saturday Night Live at one point, and just to see the way he became reviled after that, or just so abused by the mainstream media, do you think that maybe plays into a little bit why Jill is asking for this recount?
I wouldn't ever attempt to try to do sort of a psychoanalysis of Dr. Stein's motivations. I can just attest to my belief that she really is committed to this idea or the principle of election integrity. And because information was brought to her that seemed that it warranted some kind of inquiry, she felt compelled to move on that. So if there's other issues there, other motivations, I will probably let other people sort of delve with those kinds of speculation. But all I could go by is what she has expressed to me, and my reading of her as a person, having worked with her for more than 3 months, and before that a few years in the Green Shadow cabinet. I wouldn't attribute any other kinds of motivations to why she's involved and what she's involved in, other than the fact that she really believes in this notion of election integrity and wants to raise up all the other issues besides just the recount, all the other ways in which votes are wasted and are not counted in this election process, and how votes are suppressed. But that part of her concern, I think, has been kind of lost. I think they've kind of let the narrative has kind of gotten away from them, and so the media is only focusing in on this very narrow notion of the recount and who may be behind, if there are any kind of shenanigans, who may be behind those things.
Now, just something else I would like to ask you, because it's something that I saw come up in not the coverage of the election per se, but from a lot of blogs and from the so-called alt-right, is the discussion about George Soros. There's people saying that Jill has some connection to him. I've also seen some people say that you had some connection with George Soros. I've seen it come up in the past where they'd said that he's responsible for funding Occupy Wall Street or Black Lives Matter. But, he is a billionaire who is politically active, and I don't think the left really speaks to his influence that much. So just from your perspective, what are your thoughts on George Soros? Is he a force for good in American politics? Is he part of this corporate establishment who is undermining grassroots movements? What are your thoughts on George Soros?
I think some of this stuff with this notion of this one individual having the ability to influence all of these various kinds of struggles and organizations, I think speaks to the kind of immature conspiratorial mentality that we have in the U.S. For example, this recall or this recount process, the first thing people started saying was, "Oh, George Soros must be behind its financing." Well, that's silly, because this was a campaign structure. The most that any one individual can give is $2,700. They now have like 140,000 or more contributors. But that still didn't stop that notion from spreading through social media. Same thing with the resistance to the Trump victory, when people took to the streets to say basically they were going to be prepared to resist Donald Trump. This had to be something that was sparked and motivated by George Soros. It's kind of insulting to the people that this notion that they're not going to engage in principled resistance unless it's somebody behind the scenes, shelling out money. It's insulting and kind of silly. So George Soros is a billionaire, has the right to fund the kind of things he thinks are important for him, and he's been doing that. He's been giving tons of money to various organizations. When I was running the U.S. Human Rights Network, for example, George Soros and OSI didn't give us 1 cent. So I don't know what kind of connection that they are suggesting that I might have with something like that. George Soros is a liberal at best, and with some right-wing inclinations. So He has a right to give money to where he wants to give, and I think some of that money is used for positive things. Other times it is used, and this is part of the NGO world, is used to fragment the movement, to undermine the ability of us building a unified movement with some clear goals and objectives. But that's the nature of NGOism. That's just George Soros.
So you had brought up something that was mischaracterized that you had said about Barack Obama. This is the final month of his presidency, or final couple months, and he has been the first African-American president of the United States. I know that amongst the American left, he gets praised on a lot of things, gets lightly criticized on some things. What would be your personal evaluation of Barack Obama's presidency?
It was a failure in every sense of the word. I mean, one can not really, you can't, it's so interesting to me when I hear him talk about his legacy. And I have to wonder, well, what legacy are you referring to? The fact that you continued and expanded the drone warfare, that you expanded U.S. military presence in various parts of the world, that you gave a green light to the intervention on the part of the Saudis into Bahrain, that you provide logistical support to and political cover for the Saudis in Yemen, that you basically allow for this so-called civil war to morph into a jihadist invasion in Syria. I mean, that you stopped President Aristide from returning back to Haiti, that you undermined the Durban process, that your Department of Homeland Security crushed the Occupy movement. What legacy are we talking about? The fact that they used the Espionage Act more so than any other presidency in the 20th century to stifle and intimidate whistleblowers, resulting in people like Chelsea Manning getting 35 years in prison just because she exposed American criminality. This is the legacy. This is the thing that liberals embrace, and Hillary Clinton wanted to run on because she said she was part of this Barack Obama experience. This man has been a disaster. He's a war criminal. He joins with George Bush and Tony Blair and Rumsfeld and his Henry Kissinger as this team of individuals responsible for death and destruction around this planet. So, legacy. I just wish that Barack Obama would. I hope he does what George Bush did and have the principles to just go away for a few years. But I suspect that's not going to be the case. We're not going to be so blessed.
So the final thing that I'd like to ask you about is the Black Lives Matter movement. This has been another really important movement in the United States over the past few years. And, now Donald Trump is going to be president of the United States. Where do you see the Black Lives Movement going under a Trump presidency?
I think that it's going to be the object of more and more intense repression. I think that he has elements in his administration and the kind of social forces that are supporting Donald Trump that they're going to see resistance as something that should be criminalized. But of course, that's not going to stop the resistance. Black people have survived hundreds of years in this country, have been in resistance for most of that time, and we will survive Donald Trump. In fact, I think that this is going to spur even more intensive organizing and resistance here in this country. So it's going to be difficult for Black Lives Matter and for most of the progressives who are now reorganizing themselves and helping to revitalize, finally, an anti-war movement, for example. This is what we face. I think the contradictions are going to sharpen. But I think what we're seeing now is the beginning of a real resistance movement developing here in this country. And I think Black Lives Matter and the movement for Black Lives will be at the center of this intensifying and I think more effective moving for democracy, social justice, and people-centered human rights here in this country.
Well, sir, thank you very much. I really do appreciate you being on the show today and sharing your perspective on all these different topics. By the way, if folks did want to follow you more, is there any website or other platform that they can follow you on?
Yes. Go to my website, ajamubaraka.com. You can follow me now that I'm tweeting. You can follow me on Twitter at Ajamu Baraka. Yes, and of course my Facebook page.
Absolutely. Mr. Baraka, thank you very much for being on Primo NUTMEG today. I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for listening. I hope that you did enjoy today's interview. Once again, if these are subjects that do interest you, please do subscribe to Primo NUTMEG on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube. And also check out previous episodes of the show with the likes of Noam Chomsky, Jill Stein, Medea Benjamin, Cindy Sheehan, John McAfee, and Phil Zuckerman. Until next time.